Thank you, Mr. Tiffany, and again, thank you to the witnesses. Council Member Ariola, just over a year ago, on October 12th, 2022, President Biden stated that national parks are, quote, treasures and wonders that define the identity of us as a nation. They're a birthright that we pass down from generation to generation, and they unite us. In your experience, do you think the recent actions to establish migrant housing on National Park Service land in New York City has lived up to President Biden's ideas for national parks, and has this united your community in any way?
It is completely contrary to his statement, and it has not united our community. It has really divided it in the fact that they will no longer be able to utilize that green space.
That's my assessment as well. Mr. Hankinson, as I mentioned in my opening statement, federal lands are the areas that dangerous criminals and drug smugglers target because they know they are remote and under-patrolled. Your testimony touched on the impact that illegal aliens have on the country, including increased rates of crime. Can you expand on the effects that dangerous criminals who cross into our country on federal lands have on our society?
Thank you. I would say that criminality is pretty evenly spread among populations. The murder rate in the U.S. is about 5 in 100,000. The population crossing the border illegally skews younger and more male, and we have no records on them. If they don't have a criminal record in the United States, even if they surrender to Border Patrol and they get fingerprinted, we have no idea what their history is. And the fact is that if you get the daily CBP reports and ICE reports of arrests, many of these people that they're arresting who've committed crimes have been arrested multiple times, and they've been deported once or more than once. And how do they get back in? They don't surrender at the border. They cross at one of the many places where it's easy not to be detected, and they disappear into that statistic of gotaways that I spoke about. So these are preventable crimes. You can't prevent all crime, but you can certainly make a difference by making an attempt to patrol the border and to catch people who are trying to come back in.
Thank you. And Deputy Chief Heithaker, President Obama's Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano wrote in 2009 that environmental laws and designations such as wilderness areas that she was talking about, she, quote, said restrictions can impact the efficacy of Border Patrol operations and can be a hindrance to the maintenance of officer safety, end quote. The Forest Service's own testimony cites wilderness restrictions as reasons why the construction of a patrol road, which would enhance border security and officer safety, would be prohibited. Does the Forest Service agree with President Obama's own Homeland Security Secretary that restrictive designations like wilderness areas along our southern border can hurt the efficacy of Border Patrol operations and endanger officers?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. I would have to defer to CBP on efficacy of how they patrol those borders. As you know, that's not within our mission to respond to that.
And I know you mentioned the terrain would prevent roads, but if you look at the draft of the legislation, we're talking about being able to construct roads even as far as a mile off of the border to account for terrain. And I know that where there's a will, there's a way. You can build a road. We've built a lot of roads in some very treacherous terrain around the country, but if you don't have access, you're just have an open area with no way to enforce the laws that we have. Mr. Hankinson, Chairman Tiffany mentioned in his statement the amount of fentanyl that is illegally flowing into the country, an astonishing 25,500 pounds, just what we confiscated this last year. Under the Biden administration, we've seen record increases in fentanyl seizures. In your opinion, will we be able to stop the flow of fentanyl into this country if we don't secure our southern border?
No, and I wouldn't suggest that we could ever stop 100% of the flow of contraband and drugs into the country, but we could make a tremendous improvement on the situation now, which is that not only are drugs being stopped at ports of entry, but they're going around through individuals with backpacks right along the border where it's easy to cross. It's percentages question, and I don't believe we could do a whole lot worse than we're doing now.
Yeah, and I actually was down there and saw migrants come across with 3 backpacks full of drugs, and the Border Patrol caught them. They dropped the drugs, and 2 of them made it back across before they could arrest them. And it happens every day, every hour. It's happening down there. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.